Let's speak to Chris Doyle. He's a commentator on Middle East affairs and the director of the Council for Arab-British Understanding. He joins us now live from London. Good to see you. Given the recent rhetoric coming out of the United States, including Donald Trump's latest comments suggesting the war could end soon, do you think there's now real urgency to bring this conflict to a close? And if so, are the Iranians feeling the same pressure?
Let's hope so. I think that the blockade that the United States has instituted has bought Donald Trump a little bit of time. The ceasefire has allowed a little bit of a breathing space where we're not seeing missiles and drones hitting American allies in the Gulf and Israel. That is all to the good, but ultimately it's really important that we get to a deal so that the Strait of Hormuz can open up, the global economy can start to recover. So it is a little bit more now that Iran is feeling the pressure because it no longer has the pressure that it was able to impose through its attacks. If the Strait of Hormuz is closed off by the United States for much longer, you'll see that its oil storage facilities will be filling up and it'll have to stop actually pumping oil. So that's going to be a challenge for it. It's going to be cut off from income. So hopefully that the two sides will be beginning to narrow the gap between their positions, which frankly at the moment is huge, in order to try to reach a deal, because there really isn't a way forward for either Iran or for the United States that is going to be positive. So it is obviously, although they may not be able to say it in public, far more in their interest to end all of this, to get back to some degree of normalcy. Now, the joker in the pack still remains Israel, because what we hear from the United States is the talk about nuclear weapons. That's the key issue. Iran must never be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. And on this, there doesn't seem to be such a huge gap. But what does Prime Minister Netanyahu think? He will have a desire to actually restart the war and to have a go at Iran's missile program, particularly.
And Chris,
well,
on the
that
point,
may not be on the table.
On the point of Israel, we know that Lebanon and Israel have just held these talks in Washington, despite Iran-backed Hezbollah condemning that meeting. How are Iranian leaders looking at this? What do you think that could mean for negotiations?
Well, here we have another disagreement. Iran, of course, had insisted that Israel's war on Lebanon must cease as part of the ceasefire. Well, that hasn't happened. Israel has gone forward. It continues to bomb Lebanon. The White House administration, Trump administration, has sought to get Israel to dial down on those attacks. But of course, you'll remember that it was this time last week that we saw this huge attack by Israel on Beirut. So that hasn't happened. And what the Israelis are trying to do is to decouple the whole issue of Hezbollah from the Iran talks. And to an extent, that has worked. But we aren't any closer really there to getting a ceasefire deal between the two sides. That doesn't seem to have progressed much. We don't know when Israel and Lebanon will get back to talks. But even then, of course, Hezbollah and Israel both say they're not, they won't agree to a ceasefire at the moment.
And on the point of nuclear enrichment, we've had plenty of reports suggesting that in Pakistan, Iran floated this 5-year pause on nuclear enrichment while the US was pushing for 20. What do you make of that level of negotiation? I mean, given Tehran's long-standing insistence on its nuclear rights, wouldn't even a temporary pause be seen as a significant concession?
To an extent, yes, but the key bottom line for the Iranian team was always the right to enrich. So pausing it, I think, is part of a concession within negotiations, but they haven't given up on that right. So now we're getting to a situation of they're negotiating of the period of the moratorium. So somehow they've got to come to a deal between 20 and 5 years. I think that's much easier
Okay.
than positions that said you'll have no right to enrich versus we insist we have a right to enrich. So perhaps there's a narrowing of the gap there. But to get this across the line, it's going to be very challenging. The lack of trust, that has obviously got so much worse after those 39 days of attritional war and destruction.
Chris, really good to get your analysis on this. Chris Doyle, commentator, Middle East Affairs, and the Director of Council for Arab British Understanding.